This one's for couples, 14 questions. Who apologizes the first after a fight? Who's the funny one? Who's more romantic? Who's more patient?
This man was supposed to love and protect her, but instead he became her worst nightmare. On December 7, 2021, 27-year-old Andreae Levette Lloyd, a devoted mother of 2 and 6 weeks pregnant with her third child, vanished and unalived by the man she trusted most, Xavier Johnson, her boyfriend of 11 years. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple. Andrea, a loving mother and compassionate caregiver, had it all. 2 beautiful kids, a partner she'd been with since her teens. But behind closed doors, something darker was growing. Lies, betrayal, and an unraveling relationship that no one saw coming. But before we begin, I just want to take a moment to thank you, my incredible viewers and subscribers. Your likes, shares, and thoughtful comments don't just support this channel, they help keep these stories alive. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and become part of this growing community that believes every story deserves to be told, and no victim should ever be forgotten. Now, let's get into it. Andreae Levette Lloyd was born on December 13, 1993, in Miami, Florida. From an early age, she radiated warmth, kindness, and compassion, qualities that would come to define her life. She wasn't just loved by her family. Her friends, colleagues, and even the people she cared for professionally were drawn to her light. Andrea had a heart that gave, and it's no wonder that when she found her calling, it was in a career that allowed her to care for others. But before she became the dedicated caregiver everyone knew and loved, Andrea started out like many do, pursuing what she thought was her path. She briefly worked in retail, but life quickly steered her in a different direction. Her natural nurturing spirit led her to caregiving, and once she found her true calling, there was no turning back. Andrea's passion for helping others and her unwavering work ethic led her to become a residential program director at Sunrise Community. She later moved to work at South Miami-Dade Group Home, where she dedicated her life to supporting individuals with mental illness, developmental disabilities, and other special needs. It was here that Andrea became the cornerstone of a community that thrived because of her. But there was one person who would change the course of Andrea's life. Xavier Johnson, a man who would become her partner, her love, and ultimately, the source of her undoing. Xavier was 32 years old, and Andrea and Xavier had been together for almost 11 years. They met when they were teenagers, their bond immediate and intense. From that point on, it was impossible to separate them. They were inseparable, as if they were destined to be together. People who saw them couldn't help but admire their connection. They weren't officially married, but that never seemed to matter. Their love flourished in the way many couples hoped for, with shared moments of joy, vacations, holidays, and celebrations. The love they had seemed unshakable. To the outside world, they had everything, the kind of relationship that others envied. Andrea and Xavier were always sharing the small, intimate things that made their bond feel special. Whether it was exchanging gifts, planning surprises, or laughing over quirky couple questions like, who apologizes first after a fight, or who's the messy one in the relationship, Andrea documented it all. She made their love look flawless, unbreakable. Social media was her canvas, painting a picture of the perfect couple, the perfect family. And before long, they welcomed their first child, then their second, both beautiful boys. They were a family, just as Andrea had always dreamed. But while Andrea poured her love into her children and her work, there was one thing she never stopped planning: the future. Her devotion to her children was absolute. Every choice she made, every decision she took, was always with them in mind. With their 2 boys thriving, Andrea and Xavier decided to expand their family once more, planning to welcome a 3rd child. Andrea was 6 weeks pregnant when the unimaginable happened. The life they had built, the love they had once shared, began to crumble beneath the weight of secrets and lies. But behind the smile-filled family photos and social media posts, there was a darker side of their relationship, a side Andrea kept hidden from most. For over a decade, their love had seemed unshakable. Xavier was charming, affectionate, the kind of man who knew exactly how to make Andrea feel special, and for years, that was enough. Until it wasn't. As the years passed, the cracks in Andrea and Xavier's relationship became harder to ignore. What once seemed like minor disagreements, the kinds of arguments couples have, began to escalate. It started with the small things, the little annoyances that usually end in an apology and a hug. But soon those apologies became fewer and the arguments grew sharper, more intense. The sweet reconciliations they used to share started to fade into the background. Xavier's true nature began to emerge. He became more controlling, more demanding, and Andrea began to feel suffocated by a relationship that had once been full of love. Even Andrea's family started noticing the subtle changes. They saw the tension, the way Xavier would isolate her, the way she seemed less happy, more distant. But it wasn't just the emotional strain, it was the betrayal. As Andrea's father would later say, Xavier had begun seeing other women. He was messing around with her, he said. For Andrea, this wasn't just painful, it was exhausting. She had given everything to this family, but she was treated like a girlfriend, not a wife. As the years passed, Andrea became more and more overwhelmed. She was stuck in a toxic, draining relationship, trying to be the devoted mother, the loving partner, but feeling unseen, unappreciated. She was drowning, but she was too loyal to leave. That was, until the breaking point came. It was clear that things weren't going to get better, no matter how hard she tried. Weeks before the tragic night, Andrea confided in her father she wanted to leave Xavier. She had finally made the decision. This wasn't just a passing thought, it was a clear resolution. And Andrea had one final, powerful moment of clarity before everything fell apart. On December 6, 2021, she posted something that would speak volumes to anyone who truly understood the pain she was enduring. Her Facebook post read, "Narcissistic manipulators. These are people who intentionally or unintentionally attack and hurt you. Then, once they hurt you and you react, they become upset at how you responded to the pain they caused. They try to turn the situation around, adding more hurtful things to make it seem like you are the problem or at fault for what they did. In reality, you did absolutely nothing to them to justify their action." With those words, it was clear, Andrea was done. She was ready to move on, to escape the toxic cycle that had consumed so much of her life. She was leaving Xavier behind, and the pain she had endured was finally going to end. But little did she know, this decision, this final moment of clarity, would set in motion a series of events that would shatter her world in ways she could never have imagined. December 7th, 2021, just after midnight, Andrea was still at work, at the South Miami-Dade group home, doing what she loved, caring for those in need with the same warmth and compassion that had made her beloved by so many. It was just another night for Andrea. Another shift, another evening spent helping others. But unknown to her, it was also the beginning of the end. It was just after midnight when the unthinkable happened. Andrea, still at her job at the South Miami-Dade group home, answered a knock at the door, unaware that the night would change her life forever. A man, someone she likely knew, was waiting on the other side. In an instant, everything shifted. Before she could react, he lunged at her, overpowering her and dragging her away from the safety of her workplace. He forced her into his vehicle, the night swallowing up the sounds of the struggle. For a moment, everything went quiet, but this was just the beginning. Hours passed, and Andrea's coworker arrived to take over her shift. But something was wrong. The patients were alone, and Andrea was nowhere to be found. She immediately reported Andrea's disappearance, The police arrived soon after, questioning her co-worker and trying to piece together the puzzle. It didn't take long for them to uncover a piece of crucial evidence, a clue that would set the course of the investigation. Surveillance footage from the group home showed a white Honda Civic pulling up to the building around 12:30 a.m. The car, with a Florida license plate Y65DL, was the same one believed to have been used by the person who took Andrea. The discovery of this vehicle brought the police closer to a suspect, but still, a key question lingered. Who was this man, and why would he take Andrea? The search for the missing mother ramped up as investigators worked tirelessly to track down every lead. The scene that unfolded in the footage was disturbing, a clear indication that something had gone terribly wrong that night. While police continued their efforts to find Andrea, her family was filled with dread. They waited, hoping for a call, hoping to hear her voice. But as the hours passed and the sun began to rise, they knew something was wrong. Andrea wasn't the type of person to disappear without a word. She was close with her family, especially with her father. The thought that she would leave without contacting anyone was unimaginable. And yet, as the day wore on, Andrea's family received the heart-stopping news. They were told Andrea was missing, and they immediately rushed to her workplace, desperate for any answers, clinging to hope that she would return safe. As they arrived, their fears were confirmed. Andrea had not left on her own. Something far worse had happened. Her family suspected, as many of us might, that the person responsible wasn't a stranger. They knew Andrea, and Andrea knew them. The police confirmed this. The person who took Andrea was someone familiar to her, someone close enough to gain her trust. It was the hardest reality to face. As the police continued to gather evidence and unravel the mystery, one thing became clear. The tragedy that was unfolding was even worse than anyone could have imagined. The family's worst fears were beginning to materialize, but the full truth, the reason why this man took Andrea, would not surface for some time, and when it did, it would be nothing short of heartbreaking. On December 8, 2021, just one day after Andrea was taken, a family member made a discovery that would shift the investigation into an unsettling direction. While searching near the Homestead Miami Speedway, roughly 20 miles away from the group home, a relative spotted something strange, a figure loitering in the shadows of the trees. At first, it seemed like an unrelated sighting, a random person in an area that didn't seem to tie into Andrea's case. But when the police arrived to investigate, everything changed. The figure in the woods was no stranger. In fact, it was someone who had been in Andrea's life for years. Xavier Johnson, her ex-boyfriend. He was parked nearby in a black pickup truck. The police were immediately suspicious. Why was Xavier here, so close to where Andrea had gone missing? What was his connection to this growing tragedy? Xavier was detained and brought in for questioning, but what the investigators uncovered next would take the case to an even darker place. The cadaver dogs were brought in to search the area, and the response was immediate. The dogs led the officers to something hidden in the trees, something that would change everything. Among the dense foliage, the officers discovered a large metal toolbox, and when they opened it, what they found inside would leave them stunned. Inside the toolbox was the lifeless body of a woman. At first, the police couldn't confirm her identity. No immediate signs of Andrea's presence were found near the truck, and the body was not clearly identified. The discovery of human remains was chilling enough, but the investigators knew they had to wait for confirmation. Meanwhile, Andrea's family continued to hold out hope that their daughter, their sister, their mother would somehow be brought home unharmed. But as the days passed, their hopes began to fade. The medical examiner's office confirmed that the body found in the toolbox was indeed Andreae Levette Lloyd, and with that confirmation came the undeniable truth that she had been taken from them forever. Xavier was arrested immediately after the confirmation of Andrea's death. He was taken to the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center, where he was held without bond. As the investigation moved forward, Xavier finally confessed. Coldly, without remorse, he admitted to kidnapping and murdering Andrea. He told investigators everything, but even with his confession, the question still remained. Why? Why would Xavier, a man who had spent over a decade with Andrea, the father of her children, the man she had trusted, why would he take her life? Especially knowing she was carrying their child. Despite the chilling confession, the answers didn't make sense, and the motive remained as haunting as the crime itself. As the investigation dug deeper, a chilling truth began to take shape, a truth that Andrea's family had suspected all along. The grief-stricken family, devastated by the loss of their beloved Andrea, started to piece together the motive behind Xavier's actions. Andrea's father, speaking to the media, gave the heartbreaking answer that no one wanted to hear. He revealed that Andrea had been planning to leave Xavier. After 11 years of being together, Andrea had reached a breaking point. She was tired of being in a relationship that felt more like an endless cycle of betrayal than love. Her father shared that Andrea had wanted more than just the title of a girlfriend. She was tired of being treated as if she didn't matter. She had been putting in everything for their family, but Xavier wasn't the partner she needed. She was like a wife, not a girlfriend, Andrea's father said, explaining how his daughter had finally found the strength to walk away from the toxic relationship. But the most shocking revelation came next. The child Andrea was carrying wasn't Xavier's. The baby she was expecting was someone else's, and that fact, combined with her decision to leave, likely sent Xavier into a fit of jealousy and rage. This painful truth gave a much clearer understanding of Xavier's motives. It wasn't just about control or infidelity. It was about losing the life he had known for over a decade. The truth, as tragic as it was, illuminated the sequence of events that led to Andrea's brutal death. On December 9, 2021, Xavier was officially charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and armed burglary with assault and battery. The case seemed open and shut, but as Xavier faced the judge, a deeper, more unsettling reality emerged. When Xavier stood before Circuit Judge Mindy Glazer, there was no remorse in his eyes, no hesitation. His confession, chilling in its coldness, spoke volumes. He had admitted to the kidnapping and murder of Andrea, but his lack of emotion left everyone in the courtroom unsettled. This case, the judge said, was serious. It was a death penalty case. Xavier's fate hung in the balance, but the weight of his actions couldn't be ignored. Andrea's father, heartbroken by the tragic turn of events, reflected on how his daughter had spent 11 years with Xavier, had 2 children with him, and yet had still made the painful decision to leave him. It was this decision, he believed, that led to the horrifying consequences. With Xavier now facing first-degree murder charges, the path ahead seemed clear. But there was still uncertainty in the air. Would the legal system uphold the severity of the crime? Would Xavier face the full consequences of his actions? As the legal proceedings moved forward, more details about Andrea's tragic death came to light. The case, though seemingly straightforward, was far from over. And as the legal battle continued, the weight of what had been taken Andrea's life, her unborn child, her future, remained unbearable for her family, who continued to search for justice in the wake of such a devastating loss. As the investigation unfolded, a key revelation emerged nearly a year after Andrea's tragic death, shedding light on a detail that had remained hidden. Until September 2, 2022. Court documents revealed a crucial piece of information about Xavier Johnson and an insurance policy Andrea had taken out with Primerica Life Insurance Company. What was once a private matter now became a pivotal aspect of the case. The insurance policy details had not been made public before, but they became central to understanding the financial motive behind Andrea's death. Andrea's life had been insured for $157,400, with Xavier listed as the primary beneficiary. But as the court would reveal, Florida law has a clear rule: those who unlawfully kill the insured person are barred from receiving any benefits from the insurance. This detail not only reaffirmed Xavier's guilt, but also brought a measure of justice for Andrea's family. Despite the grief they were enduring, the law had ruled that Xavier could not claim the policy, and the money would instead go to Andrea's father, Andreae Lloyd. But no amount of money could replace the loss of Andrea, a mother, a daughter, and a sister whose life was tragically cut short. Meanwhile, the battle for full accountability was far from over. On December 10, 2021, just days after Xavier's arrest, Andrea's family had to face another painful reality: the custody of her children. Andreae Lloyd, Andrea's father, appeared before a judge to take custody of Andrea's two sons. The relief of seeing Xavier behind bars didn't lessen the pain of the children losing their mother. And as if the pain wasn't enough, December 13, 2021 would have been Andrea's 28th birthday. Instead of celebrating the day with Andrea, her family and friends gathered at a spot near where Andrea's body had been found, a swampy, desolate area in Homestead. It was a bittersweet moment. To honor her, they released pink balloons, symbolizing their love for Andrea, a loving mother whose life had been taken by selfishness and rage. Andrea's family wanted to remember her for the joy she brought into their lives, even in her absence. As Andrea's uncle and godbrother shared, she would have wanted them to smile and laugh, not mourn her passing. She wouldn't want to see us cry, they said. She always made us laugh. Andrea's death had left a void that no one could fill. On her 28th birthday, her family wasn't celebrating the milestones she should have been there to witness. Christmas was just around the corner, and they knew she wouldn't be there. New Year's Eve would come and go, but Andrea's absence would be felt with every passing day. Life would move forward, but the memories of Andrea, the kind, loving mother and devoted daughter, would remain forever in their hearts. And that brings us to the end of Andrea's tragic story. How do you think Xavier should have handled the situation, especially knowing the child was his own? What would you have done in a situation like this? What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know in the comments. There are more on the channel, stories that are just as haunting. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. It's how we keep these important stories alive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.